Edie was sharing the story, and by the time she was showing one, she got a call, oh, that was sold as well. So in one day, we went from 9 listings down to 3. So we thought today might be a good time to see if we can get some other ideas as to how we might more effectively get out there, get in touch with people, and be more successful in that listing situation. Before I actually get into our panelists, though, we did give you a couple other tools that we'd like to take a quick glance at. One of them is called the pre-listing interview. And I'm just going to make a couple suggestions for you. All we're trying to do here is gather information about the sellers, what their motivations are, what their plans are, when they need to be doing things. First suggestion, I don't think this is something you should give to them. I think this is something you should be asking them. You want to adapt this to your style. You want to adapt it to your situation. For example, I think probably the 2 more important things on the sheet, number 10, have you done any updating to the home since you bought it? Have you done anything that would add value to the property? Maybe you sold them this house, so you know them and you're kind of familiar, but maybe you haven't been in touch with them for a couple of years or even a few years. What are you going to be asking any of the old Floyd Whitman people, ballpark, how much you think it's worth? We want to know what that seller is thinking in today's market. Number 14, are you interviewing any other brokers for this job and when they're going to be interviewed? Well, I don't know if I want to plant any ideas in their heads, so I might just say, have you talked to any other brokers about selling? And they're probably going to open up and tell you what their thoughts are when it comes to that. So this is an idea that some of the information you can get, ask when they need to be moved, that's obviously good information. And then the second sheet is 6 open house questions to your listings. One of the Ninja webinars we listened to focused on that when people come into your open house, we always think of them being buyers, but in reality, they might well be sellers. They might have a property to sell here or even somewhere else. And we need to learn that information and even be prepared to potentially go to their property after the open house to take a look at it and discuss what their selling plans would be. So you can read that one, but it gives you some good questions to ask those parties when they come into your open house. And I've also heard some good stories about open houses. I think Paul, where's Paul? Did you have an open house Sunday?
Yes.
And you had
6 people.
6 people coming through that potential open house. So, and remember, when we get traffic at our open houses today, they've seen it online. They know a lot more about it. So we said we probably don't get as many people, but the ones that do come to our open house are probably better candidates. With that then, what we said we want to do is just share some information from our associates on the panel as to some of the tips that they do when they are in that listing situation. So, Wendy, let's start with you. We're going to talk about some marketing activities.
I'm going to start with Frank.
Okay.
Thank you.
I was going to say, we're going to start with Frank. Because he's number 2 on the sheet. So, anyway, so Frank?
Good morning. Here we go.
Good morning. I'm Frank Ennis with the Lake Station office. And I'm just going to be discussing comparative market analysis this morning. My co-panelists will actually be going through listing presentations. So a CMA is a nice complement to any of the presentations that you're going to see here this morning. I think it's very important to understand that when we talk to our clients, because as professionals, and not just in the real estate industry, we tend to use acronyms all the time. So it's important not to just say CMA. You need to let your clients know what a CMA is, which is a comparative market analysis. And you can even go beyond that and let them know that it's an abbreviated appraisal, because that's pretty much what it is. So the way to get started, if you're fortunate enough to have the subject property already in the MLS, all you have to do is insert the previous MLS listing number into the CMA program, and that'll self-populate all of the fields basically that you need. Now, if it's not in the MLS, then of course you're going to have to go to the county and you can pull up an assessor's report, and that'll pretty much give you most of the information that you need. You're still going to have some dialogue with your sellers to fill in the missing blanks if there's items that you're not sure of. Now, when you pull up the information from a previous listing, it's also important to look at the picture that comes up, because if it's a dated or a bad picture, you really don't want to use that. And I think your clients would be impressed if you actually take the time to drive by the listing and take a really nice photo, possibly on a nice day, insert that in, because then when you meet them, they're going to be impressed that some of them say, wow, I didn't realize my house looked that nice, or just that you took the time to go by. So I think it's taking that extra step that our clients appreciate. So when you get into the CMA, and of course it's going to be different for all of our markets, and I'm sure that you have appraisers that you have a good relationship with, hopefully, in your market, and it would be good to communicate with them because they'll be able to help you with a lot of these adjusted values that you're going to use in the CMA. So of course they're going to vary by market, and they're going to vary by the size of the home and everything like that. So some of the obvious adjustments that you're going to make, the most basic are, the size, the number of bedrooms, the number of bathrooms, but you can also take age into account, you can take the condition into account, and it's not always a reliable estimate, but in the assessor's website they do have the condition as they see it. So you can kind of start with that and then tweak it as need be. But of course you can make adjustments for the garage, the size of the garage, whether the house has a basement or not, the size of the basement, whether the basement is finished or not, and of course if depending on the exterior, if you have an upscale neighborhood and you have brick and stone, of course you can make adjustments for that. If the house has fireplaces, if it has swimming pools, exterior features, patios, decks, fencing, basically it goes on and on. You can even make adjustments for taxes. So if you're looking at two similar properties but the taxes are out of line on one, you can actually make an adjustment, because if you're in a payment-driven market, that's going to make a big difference for people. And it's also important, if rather than just to make an overall adjustment for square footage, if you have a multi-level home, such as a tri-level, let's say, it's important to determine a value for square footage for each level, because obviously an upper level is going to have less value than a main level would be. So you can make a different adjustment for an upper level as to a main level, lower level, basement. And again, these are all items that an appraiser would be able to assist you with. We've actually been doing CMAs for quite a long time. We were kind of forced into it when we had the tax situation, when all the taxes went out of line, probably about 11 or 12 years ago. And our office, for one, we were bombarded with people from all over Hobart Township asking for our assistance, and it was because the Hobart Township Assessor's Office was referring them to us. So it was kind of a good thing, but we were basically bombarded. And what we did was we were happy to help people, and in exchange for our service, if they made a donation to a local food pantry, that's what we asked them to do. And we felt if they weren't willing to do that, then they really weren't, they didn't deserve our attention on this. But anyway, that's kind of how we got thrown into the whole CMA process, and it's a very valuable tool in addition to the listing presentations that you have. And other than that, if anybody has any questions for me, I'm happy to talk to you. You can contact me at the Lake Station office, and I'll be happy to go over this with you in any more detail if you have any questions. Okay?
Hi, I'm Debbie Hall. I wanted to talk about a few things. The first thing I wanted to talk about is the info I want to know before I go on a listing appointment, which kind of fits in exactly with our pre-listing interview form that you got today. I've done a version of this for years, and the thing you want to do, or at least what I found to be helpful for me, is to internalize these questions. You don't want to, you can have the form in front of you, but you don't want to be the robot saying, what sold you on your home when you bought it? What features did you like? You want to have conversation and come across as very natural, just trying to find out this information. So when I'm talking to someone on the phone, the first thing I want to do is kind of get a read on what type of personality this person is. Are they a warm and fuzzy person? If they're warm and fuzzy, be warm and fuzzy back. You want to mirror and match whoever you're talking to. If they're a very analytical type of personality, if you're all warm and fuzzy, you're going to drive them crazy. And the opposite is true too. If they're warm and fuzzy and you're very cold and analytical, you're not going to get that connection that you need to get with people. So try to mirror and match the people you're talking to. And so I start with the questions, tell me about your home, why are you moving, where are you going to be moving to? You do it in a conversational kind of way. You go through quite a few of these things with, tell me about your updates, any renovations, what maintenance have you done on the home? As we're going through, they're just answering these questions for you. So it's very easy to get the question. One of the questions I really want to know is, realistically, what do you think we're going to be able to sell your home for? Because if you can get that number from them, that's going to make your CMA process much easier. If you can look and see that you can substantiate the price that they're thinking, easily, it's going to be a much shorter, quicker listing appointment. You come in, you already agree with them, and you're ready to go. I would say probably 9 out of 10 people will just tell me what number they're thinking at that point. They're used to answering questions already. I already asked them 20 questions about their house. And everybody has a number in their head is what I think. And so typically they just tell me that number. Once in a while you get the person who says, well, that's why I'm talking to you. I want you to tell me what my number should be. So, but really I'd say that's 1 out of 10 who will ask me that question. So you make your appointment. I let them know, well, one very important question I didn't see on this list is I always ask, are all the decision makers going to be at the appointment? Because it kind of stinks when you go through all your work, you're there, you have a great, CMA, you have a great presentation, you're ready to go, and it's husband and wife, and the husband is working shifts and he's at work. So now, why do you have to come back and do it again, I guess, when he's off work, if the wife says okay. So you want to make sure all the decision makers are going to be there. The other thing I wanted to talk about is what do I bring to the presentation? I use an awful lot of downloads from McCallie.net, from the file downloads. There's just a wealth of information there. I print a color listing presentation, like we have up there, for every listing I go on. I used McCallie, the pretty blue folders you can get from the corporate office. I use those. They have the gold seal on the front. I also love, this is one of my favorite, this is the updated version, but I always use the market leader chart. That's the top thing on the one side of my folder, because there's nothing better than to say, well, we sell more houses than anybody else. It's kind of a drop in mic moment when you actually say, what are we waiting for? We said, why wouldn't you want to list your house with the company that sells the most houses? It only makes sense. So one side I have my listing presentation and my graphs and charts. The other side is I gather all the information on their house. So if they have prior listings on the house, their assessor reports, their treasury report, I do the real list report, I like that a lot. I do the any comps and CMA. And I also put a copy of the contracts, and the net sheet is the very back thing, because we'll get to that, but I don't want them making that the focus of our presentation from the very beginning. As far as the presentation itself, I don't sit there and go through every page with them. I might open it up, I flip through, I might point out a page or two. I feel it's just that you have it. It's a professional presentation, you have it in front of you. Just the fact that you have it in this professional format and you're leaving it with them, I think says everything. And basically I say that I'll leave this for you to go through, but I do hit a couple high points, but I don't sit there and go page by page with them like I'm reading them a book or something. The other things I bring on my listing appointments is I bring my laser measure, I bring a sign, I bring the lockbox. I kind of got myself into a mindset over the years that it's not a listing, it's a listing appointment to list the house. I'm not interviewing to list the house. I go in with the assumption I'm listing the house today. And I've really convinced myself that that's appointment presentation kind of worked out to be about half the length it used to be. Because I used to have to talk about, it's a small company, but what are the benefits of that, but you're going to have me, and I'm going to do very personal attention and all those things. But I kind of had to convince people why it was a good idea to list with this small company. Well, that's become very easy now because I have my number one, the Northwest Indiana chart, and yet I'm still bringing to the table the personal attention that I'm going to bring to them. So that's about it. It's just talking to people. They can tell when you really care about them, I think, and
that's what I do to prepare for my listing appointments.
I
I've been in the business, I've been a realtor now for 10 years. I signed up right at the wrong time, 2008, when everything crashed. So I've had to, work really hard to get things going. The past few years have been really a lot better. Before that, I was Althea's secretary. I worked with her. I was her right hand for 6 years, and I thought, I know how to do all this. I want to go and shop with everybody else and look at these houses. And
It'll be so much fun.
It'll be more fun, right? Some of the things that I feel that's very, very important is to get to know your clients and understand them, and like she said, see what kind of people they are, and find out things about their home that they loved about their home, why they purchased their home. That gives you tips to help you sell their home to somebody else. Maybe they're looking for the same kind of things. As far as McCallie is not necessarily #1 in Illinois, so it's a little bit harder. We can't just go in and say, hey, I'm McCallie Real Estate, of course you're going to sign up with me. We do have to work a little bit harder, I feel. Illinois doesn't sell as easy as Indiana, so the houses will be on the market a little bit longer, and the houses are cheaper than Indiana. So to convince them, yeah, you're moving to Indiana and you're paying this, but we got to sell your house for that, So you really kind of need to make a relationship with them to get them to trust you. And what you do and what you really believe is true. You're not trying to sell their house for less than what it really is worth. It just is unfortunate sometimes, the market and things like that. I always use my 3-ring binder, which I forgot today. So sometimes when you go to the listing and you don't have it, you get a call and you're on your way there. And no, I don't go through page by page, but I do have flyers that I make for people if they would like flyer boxes in their yards. I show them the different kinds that I've done. I don't just do the MLS, sometimes I do them out of the other programs and things. So that's something else. I show all the websites and everything that McCallie, has for everybody, all the billboards they do, our signs, just showing how we're getting McCallie's name out there, and we've got offices all over, more and more in Illinois, and why we're growing and why they should work with us. Leading real estate companies in the world is another thing that I do talk about if they know somebody else that's going somewhere else, or that we get referrals from people coming from other states and countries and things that might be interested in your home in Illinois. Because there is Amazon that's just opened up in Monier, so that's a big company. The company's in Bourbonnais. Bourbonnais is a little bit better than Creighton Beecher area as far as the listings and sales and things, but because Indiana's so close, people just want to jump the border, so. The tool belt, I always talk about the tool belt, and all the different things that we offer. And then I really just keep talking about why I would be the best for the job, and what I will do for them, and how I will help them through the process and hold their hand, with everything that they need. There's never any stupid question. Ask me anything that you need to ask, I do flyers and things like that, like I said. Pictures, I take tons of pictures, because I feel like pictures are very, very important in a listing. So I'll take 75 to 100 at least of a house, depending on the size, and then I just keep picking which one I can make look a little bit better. The sellers net out, I really do feel that is important, so they're not surprised in the end. I hate that we have to put in there the taxes, because Illinois taxes are higher than Indiana. So we're sitting there saying you owe $6,000 or $10,000 just in taxes, that you're going to have to give a credit to the buyer and stuff. So that makes it hurt even more. And then our title fees are more in Illinois. So it's easily $20,000 in charges to the sellers. So in Illinois. Be confident. I try to be as confident as I can and friendly as I can with them, and kind of firm, if it's a price that they're not really happy with, it's like, unfortunately this is what the market shows, And then of course the biggest thing is to listen. You gotta just stop and listen to what they're looking for and what their needs are, and like I said, what brought them to that house so that it would help you try to sell that house. So, that's about it.
Wendy Embry, Cherville, Cedar Lake, and Lowell offices. Just to add to what everyone has already stated, Debbie had mentioned the blue file folders. We obviously have two different choices at McCallie, the two-pocket one, and then this one. I'm a firm believer of what Debbie said too, that I always leave something behind. Sometimes you'll know you're up against another agent, sometimes you're not. You won't know that. Sometimes we may think that we have a listing in the bag, and like Debbie said, I think it's important, the confidence level, but I go with my gun's loaded. I go with all the information that I know I need, and then wait to see, like they said, what the hot buttons are. I have found, and my encouragement to you would be, that we have tools that other companies don't have. I know you hear us preach that, but it's true. I interview prospective agents. I assist Tracy in hiring people from other companies, and one of their biggest complaints is, I don't feel equipped. I don't have tools. Anything that I have to do, I have to prepare myself. Well, I know I don't have time for that, and I'm thankful for the tools that we have. So my encouragement to you today would be, use Macaulay Net. Everything from the listing presentation to the CMA that Frank mentioned, I have all in this folder. And then I add additional pieces depending upon what the situation requires. I'm a firm believer in the flyer boxes and the flyers, and I'll tell you why. These take about 5 minutes to produce. If anyone needs help or has never done one, I'm happy to help you over the phone. I can be in front of a computer or from the offices that I manage, it doesn't matter. These are a benefit for a number of reasons. They're in Macaulay Net. They take about 5 minutes to prepare. First one might be 10 minutes just because you're getting used to it. They benefit the seller. First off, you ask if you can have a flyer box, and if they say yes, keep the flyer box filled. Of course, that's a negative if they see it not filled. Keep it filled. People will pull up. It's funny to watch sometimes, but they do pull up and they get the information out of the flyer box. You know, we think that everybody uses the internet, and most people do, but one of the things I talk about in the listing presentation is the pros and cons of technology. It is great in many aspects. I also think it's caused things in our industry to be broken down as far as communication. Being a manager, we get very few complaint calls, but I can tell you when we do get them normally as managers, it has to do with communication. So that's one of the main things that I emphasize during the listing appointment is you will have consistent and thorough communication with me. But then you have to do what you say you're going to do and not let down the client. I talk about from the very beginning, from the properties listed, how I market the property, and then I talk about feedback. If you're coming into a situation where, say, that they had someone prior listing the house, I never bash the other agent, don't downgrade them or the company in any way. I just ask, how many showings did you have? It's amazing, most people don't know. They can't tell you. I ask, what prior feedback? That's usually where you find out what their hot button is. I don't know what my feedback was. I really hardly got feedback. I was like pulling teeth trying to get feedback from my agent. So that's something that I work very, very hard at. I pester till I get it. I usually tell a seller, if I haven't been able to get your feedback in 2 or 3 days, they're probably not bringing us an offer. If it's that hard to get feedback, because you know how it is these days with listings. If they like it, you've got feedback within a few minutes. If they're showing, hey, we're bringing an offer. But I think sometimes we forget, because we get so busy, feedback is critical to the seller. Even if it's negative, be truthful, focus on the positive first, but be honest about the feedback. I always tell my sellers, there's many things you can't do anything about, and we'll get through that. There is a buyer for your home. The things that you can't do anything about, let's move on. But the things that you can, let's address those as quickly and as in excellence as possible. I talk about the way that I've got to market their home. Many times when I'm up against another agent, that seems to be also a very important aspect is they don't want to just know that it's on the internet. What else are you going to be doing? I talk about, and once again, you have to do what you say you're going to do. One thing that we do in our office, not every office meeting, but we do give the agents opportunity to talk about their listing. So I'll say, at a monthly meeting, I'll be able to discuss your listing on screen, show photographs with other agents in my office, talk about your listing, and then I also talk about, just like Tracy allowed us today, to be in front of this many agents and have Becky be able to say the listings she's got coming up and describe them, or Brenda Spitz, is huge. Other companies don't have this. They may have 5, 10, 15 people in their whole office. So we have a lot of benefits that other companies don't have, and I feel like sometimes we don't use them, or I don't use them even to the best of my ability, or to what we have. As far as some of the things that I utilize out of Macaulay Net, besides the flyers, I use this particular chart that's been super helpful lately. In the marketing, Monica and Stephen have the last 6-year market analysis from back, or 7 years back to 2012. This is super beneficial. I don't know, it seems like a lot of the listings I've been doing recently, I have been with people who have, what does the trend say? People sell their home in 3 to 7 years. Even though they say to us, this is going to be my lifelong home that you just sold me, that's not usually true. And so this chart is super beneficial. If anyone needs help, again, I'm willing to help with it. But this kind of thing, I think like Debbie mentioned, the visuals are where it's at. People want to be able to touch these kind of things, see them, and then keep them. I leave all this behind. Depending upon who you're dealing with, our Google Analytics charts are for us there every month. Monica emails it to us, super utilizable chart. And I don't just give the highest one, I take 2 or 3 of them to show them, because I think people, once again, what are we doing? We're building trust. We need to become their trusted real estate advisor. And so in doing that, show them several months. You know, January wasn't, or February wasn't, you know, we're a little, we're great and we're slow at the same time right now as far as listings. So almost 60,000, that's great. But anyway, they need to see that. It's important for them to be able to know, and I break down, and a lot of times they'll want to talk about this chart further, and you can see what they hone in on, whether it's other countries or, you know, age group and that type of thing. I love the individual charts for the individual towns. These are also on McCallieNet. Everything I'm talking about is right on McCallieNet on the file download section. These are super great. When I recently was up against a company, smaller brokerage, they didn't tell me the individual agent I was up against, but they told me the company. And it was funny because I took my chart and happened to notice that that company did make the top 10, but they weren't number 1 like us. And I saw what they were looking at. They were seeing, they had already met with that person. And so they liked this chart. And it's, whether you're a seasoned agent, I think that sometimes as seasoned agents, we may get away from utilizing some of these things, so I just encourage you to do it. It makes us better at our job, it makes us accountable, and if you're a brand new agent, I remember having my first listing appointment. My second one, they asked how many homes did I sell. I had to honestly say no, big fat 0, but I chose a company that does sell the most listings, that does sell the most real estate. Just a quick testimony regarding the flyers that I put in the flyer boxes. I think the flyer boxes are $20. They last for a good amount of time. I have a listing in Dyer currently. Thankfully, it just got under contract, but a woman drove by the home. She called me first, forgive me. She called me and she said, I'd like you to come look at my home. And I always try to ask people, how did you hear about me? She said, your listing in Dyer, I pulled up and grabbed a flyer. Now this woman's probably in her 70s. She does use the internet, not a whole lot, but a little bit. But she said, my husband passed a few months ago. I'm already moved into a family home. I need to list my home. Called me from my flyer. Met her Thursday, or forget me, she called Thursday. I met her Saturday for a listing appointment. It looks like I've got the listing. Could she have found myself or someone else on the internet? Could someone else have told her? We know that people know 10.2 agents. But yet, for her, it was finding someone or someone in the area that's currently doing something in Dyer to come look at her house. So I just encourage you, use the tools that we have. If you're not using them, start using them. If you are using them and it's working, continue to do that.